My name is Juan Gonzalez. I am the founder and CEO of G&Co, a digital experience agency and consulting firm focusing on retail and commerce, and we work with brands like Nike, Lululemon, and Louis Vuitton. Due to the pandemic, most luxury and apparel brands are now having to shift their physical retail to digital means, and it obviously doesn't come as a surprise to anyone due to the innovation and to the investments that digital channels have seen the past couple years. But with the industry changing and evolving as a whole, what are the main three things and key themes that we're seeing with successful fashion apparel brands? And I'm talking about your top performing brands within the sector. Think your Dior in Asia and their investments into WeChat. Think about Gucci and their investment into e-commerce that is now paying off in folds, and what exactly that means for the industry as a whole. So the main three things that we're seeing are, first, the digital strength of that brand, what exactly they're doing to ensure that they have a robust e-commerce means, and that's a lot further than just their website. I'm talking about their social presence as a whole. We'll go into depth for every single one of these points right now, but I'm going to talk about the main three things. Second of all, the social consciousness, thinking about being eco-friendly, sustainable, and investing heavily into that and ensuring that their consumers are now aware of how their lines are now up to par and are obviously making it a much more sustainable and eco-friendly future for the industry as a whole. And then ultimately we have number three, opportunistic investments, which is saved for the largest brands, and I'm talking about the houses in Europe, right? Where they're going out and they're buying these brands that are struggling. You know, if you were a B to C or D class player in the luxury space, it's been a lot harder for you this past year as you don't have the cash cushion, you don't have the capital to perhaps survive the roller coaster that has been this pandemic. And even though, you know, things are getting a lot better for retail, even physically, with kind of the vaccine rollout and everything, we can still see that a lot of these brands were damaged and they had a hard time surviving. So, you know, you have your LVMH giants who are coming in and swooping in smaller brands, and that where they can then see an upside, or they're selling off IP that they have internally at those brands, and other equity companies are coming in and swooping in and buying them and doing all sorts of things. So opportunistic investments as a whole. But let's get in depth into every single one of them and what I mean. So number one, digital strength. Again, this doesn't come as a surprise to anyone. If you're a brand who invested heavily into your digital presence, into your e-commerce, into communicating with your consumer online, you are now really reaping those benefits. What does that mean for a lot of the brands in luxury? Well, historically, the luxury space, the fashion, the apparel space has been very reluctant to invest heavily into their e-commerce. I mean, compared to most brands out there, when it comes to investing heavily into e-commerce or smaller packaged goods, think of the smaller brands that you buy online, perhaps makeup or even home goods they have at home, you're seeing a lot more investment into that side of things. And, you know, even a couple years back, you have executives at LVMH, and I'm just paraphrasing here, but they didn't really believe that people would buy $2,000 bags, $5,000 bags online. Obviously, I mean, we're living in a new world now where people are buying online. The consumers nowadays are digital first. So now we have to create strategy around that. It is not so much just click, fill out your credit card information, you're gone. It is now an experience online. I'm talking about the first time they interact with your brand, when they go into their social media feed, how they feel, the aesthetic there. The aesthetic and the aura and the mission and the way that you position your brand has now transcended your homepage and your PDP and your PLP on your e-commerce site. It is now much more holistic. I'm talking about the press that you get. I'm talking about the PR that you invest in. I'm talking about the go-to-market strategy into a new country, your email newsletter. I'm talking about the content you create. All of these things are now much more holistic, right? It is not so much more just a website you go on, you buy. Let's look at this from a lens of actual strategic confidence for every single brand and how exactly you want to be presented online for your brand itself. And this kind of takes me to point number two. Okay, so now you've invested heavily into your digital strength. So let's hope you have a great following on Instagram, where most people are kind of are in the 25 to 45-year-old range, and hopefully investing into TikTok as well, large social media platform as well for that younger crowd. Let's say you're investing heavily into those channels. You have a kick-ass email newsletter. People really love your brand, and they truly admire what it is that you're doing. What are some other values that you need to communicate? Well, one of the biggest ones, again, was going sustainable. You know, investing into your packaging, being eco-friendly, being sustainable. This is something that's always been kind of a cornerstone of mostly of these direct-to-consumer ventured-backed companies. Think about your Everlane.
Denim is a dirty business that pollutes the world's water.
Think about your smaller, more niche brands, probably like a Summer Fridays, where you're a direct-to-consumer label. You're investing heavily into ensuring that your brand is communicating how you care about climate change, how buying from that brand, you are furthering your stride as someone who can minimize your carbon footprint because you can feel confident in buying from that company because you feel as if though that they are genuinely caring about the environment and what exactly that means for the planet as a whole. I mean, it's great branding to position yourself as eco-friendly. I think if you think of the top cohort of brands right now and the top performing brands, so we have a top performing brand list, and number one was Apple. Not a surprise, right? And the thing about Apple is that Apple's a luxury company, but they do so in a way where they were talking about being eco-friendly consistently. And even though Apple is not a luxury fashion brand, and some people might argue that it is a fashion brand in itself, I mean, look at the stuff they're doing with their Hermes, with the AirTag, and all the things they've done with their Hermes with the Apple Watch as well. Point being is that, Apple's investing heavily into the company being viewed as an eco-friendly company. You think of any tech giant that actually cares about being eco-friendly, you think Apple. Almost immediately, and that's because they've really invested into positioning themselves as that go-to player.
Better. It's a powerful word.
And seemingly, you're going to consistently see a lot of luxury players do the same, where they're utilizing, less products that can maybe affect animals, so they're not testing on animals, or maybe utilizing less furs or other things that could be seen as, not so conscious. And I think those investments in itself, great marketing branding move, but ultimately it's better for the industry as a whole. We're minimizing the carbon footprint, and we're also ensuring that brands in themselves are seemingly less impactful for the environment. So it's a win-win. But brands need to communicate that if they are doing so. And again, if you're not doing so, one, it's going to come off as extremely inauthentic, and you'll get into a lot of fire if you're just doing that. So again, ensure you're being authentic if you are going to communicate that. But if you are, strictly communicate it, make it clear to the consumer that you are investing heavily into being that sustainable brand, and that you are much more than just a transaction. You are someone with a mission. You are someone with an aura around them. You are someone who has this brand equity built around yourself, and that moving forward, that buying from your brand is making a great impact for the planet. So that's great. And ultimately, this is again, you want to reserve this for the biggest kind of luxury brands out there, the ones that are coming in, they're buying brands up. I mean, if you want to look at the past couple of years, I mean, economics aside, there has been almost this monopolization of every industry, where the largest brands are essentially getting stronger and the smaller brands are having a harder time competing.
I want to get more detail now with Swetha Ramachandran, GAM Investment Manager. Swetha, that's an insane number. 52% organic growth for fashion and leather sales, and a super solid beat on the revenue line as well.
This is no different when it comes to fashion, apparel, luxury space. And I want to take a moment to just also distinguish luxury as a whole and apparel. It's a lot more aggressive in luxury, but apparel, you're seeing companies like Nike where they're acquiring and they're investing a lot heavier into their digital channels because they have that capital that can then, they can be indexed at a higher rate because they have a strong basis online, giving them access to cheap capital. With that cheap capital, they can then reinvest and have almost this flywheel, spin wheel effect, where they're essentially getting larger and larger due to them being able to now invest heavily into their digital channel. So it's always a great plus. But brands that are like Nike and they're investing heavily into that, it's amazing. It's furthering their stride. But what you see because of that entry into the marketplace, where brands like Nike are essentially taking up a lot of market share. So we've personally actually worked with Nike, funny enough. Just in case point, it's very clear what happens when the larger brands can now reinvest capital into themselves. Those are really the main three things that we're seeing in the industry play out, and we believe that they're going to be the three most salient points when it comes into the industry moving forward. And we believe that, as time goes on, they will become more important. These are things that are not just for 2021, but 2021 and beyond. And obviously, we're going to have a mix of other things come in as time goes on and the industry evolves and becomes more complex, as it always does. But if you want to access our fashion and apparel industry index, where we talk about how essentially the global economic outlook looks like for luxury, some case studies about what brands are doing to ensure they're performing well, and the top 10 performing brands in the sector, what they're doing, why is it that they were rated as such. I'm going to leave a link so you can check out the resource itself. You can read it, check it through, see how brands are performing nowadays. But again, thank you for your time, and thank you for watching.